All right, so I'm going to get started, so if we can all calm down and get ready for some change. So welcome everyone. My name is Jonathan Garvey from Nursing Education. This is our second patient care grand rounds of this year. Our topic for today is responding to change. And so I just want to first announce for any of the super users in the group, we will have a super user meeting directly following this from 2 to 3. So I think there might have been some misinformation about that. We welcome anybody to sign up outside, even if you had not registered, and we'll make sure you get the evaluation form. So let me just go through a few slides here before we get started, just to talk about the fact that this is one of our patient care ground rounds, which we offer continuing education credits for our nursing staff. And so these are the disclosures, and that none of our faculty or presenters here today have anything to disclose. They have no conflicts of interest or regarding this content. And then just a quick review of our agenda for the day. We're just gonna, after my welcome and agenda review, Sue Janty is gonna introduce our presenters in this topic and provide a little bit more background on what we're gonna be talking about. And then we have Art, our CEO, who's going to get a little bit more into responses to change and really his personal response to change as he's gone through changes at hospitals, and share with us on that, which will be very helpful. Lori Gibson's going to do a very short part on staying resilient through transitions, which should help us all as we weather this ever-changing healthcare world. And then Sue Janty is going to help us have a little discussion and facilitate that. So I really welcome everybody to come down as close as possible, because it's going to be really hard to have a discussion if you guys are all way in the back there. So I actually, when I'm done here, when I stop talking, while we transition between presenters here, if people can start moving down, because really you guys are way up there and we need you to come back down here, okay? So if you can start that process a little bit now. When I stop talking here, I'm going to finish the rest of my slides. So I'm a member of the planning committee along with Lori Gibson and Sue Janty. That's our planning committee that put together this content and decided what we'll be discussing here today. We've got our presenters, Art, Lori, and Sue that I mentioned. So Art's our CEO and president. We've got Lori Gibson from the Learning Development team. And then we've got Sue Janty, who's our appropriately the Director of Behavioral Health, which will be discussing with us the impacts of change. So as I mentioned, nurses who want to collect contact hours for this, for their certifications, can receive 1.25 credits after attending this conference and submitting an evaluation. I'll also be offering this out online as a recorded presentation that they can get in green light, and we'll still be able to get contact hours. So if people have missed this and said, gosh, I need contact hours, and I was really sad that I couldn't make it, it'll be okay, because we can have them watch the recording later and still get the contact hours. So basically the purpose of this is that we really want staff to be able to be resilient and productive in the face of change by making personal choices that facilitate that. And we're going to differentiate a little bit between chosen and imposed change, define change and understand its impact. We're going to identify 1 to 2 tangible steps that you can do to move forward in a positive way, and then recognize changes within healthcare that will continue at basically a tremendous and unrelenting pace. I think that's something we all have to realize. I think that's something that I'm even slow to realize as I look at, oh, well, January 2016, things will calm down, I'll be fine, I'll have lots of time. No, that's even something somebody who is putting together a change presentation, have yet to realize that no, this is going to continue to move at a pretty fast pace. So it'll take us time to get there. So just a real quick note on upcoming patient care grand rounds. We've got our patient-centered care one in November and a process improvement one that we're planning for December. So that'll be our 4 for this year, and we'll plan on doing more in 2016. So I'm really excited about that prospect. Housekeeping items, please turn off your cell phones or silence them at least. Restrooms are located up the stairs and to the right at the exit of the auditorium. And at this point, if any of you in the back want to come down and take part in so that you can take part in the discussion at the end here, this would be a good time to do that as we transition to Sue, who's going to talk a little bit more about our presenters and this topic. Okay?
You guys are very cooperative. Can you hear me? In the back, those of you in the back row. Greetings, everyone. I'm Sue Janty, and the question for you is, have you noticed that change is afoot? And have you noticed that change is everywhere? Even if you think you're in a stable period. Your neighbors move and you have to learn about new neighbors and their patterns. Your washing machine breaks and you have to learn how to use a new model. Streets are under construction and you have to figure out a new way to get to work. And then, of course, your 18-year-old goes off to college and you have to figure out how to navigate that whole process. So even for those of us who think we're in a stable period, change is everywhere. And then have you noticed changes afoot in healthcare? And what about Meriter? Have you noticed any changes at Meriter lately? I think that if we look at change, some changes in our lives are changes that we choose. Like if I choose to apply for a new job and get a new job, I can assume that there's change ahead for me, and I've chosen that. Other times, changes are imposed on us. Think about Epic. Epic is changing. Have you heard about that change? So I think that if you think about change as a change that's imposed on us versus a change that we choose, I think sometimes how we respond varies. So think about that. And so it's how we respond to how we respond to a change is actually more significant than the change itself. And how we respond to change a lot of times relates to how we perceive that change. So to go along that thought process, I would say requires those of us that are thinking about it to have some self-awareness. I think it helps if we are able to self-reflect. I think it helps if we can draw on previous experiences. And I'm thinking that there are some people in this room that probably see some of the healthcare changes that are occurring as changes that are imposed on you or me or all of us. And other people probably see those changes as something that are maybe energizing as opposed to maybe more victimizing, as tends to be the reaction sometimes if we feel a change is imposed on us. Like, can you believe that's happening? How did that ever, you know, those sorts of thoughts. So as we were planning this presentation, as Jonathan pointed out, we thought, oh, well, who might be a good person to have come and talk with us? There's Art Nizza. And the Italian pronunciation is Nizza. We just had an in-depth conversation about the pronunciation of the word N-I-Z-Z-A. So if you are Art, you are in the power position, so you probably have all kinds of control. You chose to come to Madison. You chose to come to Meriter. So if you think about that, it's hard to say that change would be something that might feel victimizing. So for the person in the room that might be perceived as having lots of control, the group that was planning this, this presentation today thought, let's invite Art to come and talk about a personal change that was imposed on him that was difficult, and to talk about how he managed that. So I'm going to introduce Art further in a minute. And then after Art speaks about his imposed change and what happened and how he managed that, Lori Gibson will be talking about some of the change processes, which I think is always helpful for us to look at. And then I want to share with you some of the things that some of the patient care leaders talked about in terms of change and what was stressful for them in terms of what's happening, and then how they're coping. And then hopefully that will present the opportunity for some discussion. So that's what we're going to be doing for our 90 minutes. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Art. Anna.